Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. Today's guest is Carrie Buntain. She is the Executive Director of the Resource Center out at Family Court, and they do some wonderful things. Welcome to our show, Carrie.
Thank you.
I wanted to have you on because you may not have noticed, we originally had Mayor Woodfin talk about the Restore program. And I didn't know what Restore was. And then he told me that Judge Hilliard ran this program. And then I talked to Judge Hilliard and we did a show on that. And then I keep hearing a buzz from Nancy Trucks, our good friend, and others about the Resource Center. So tell the audience how you ended up. She's a lawyer and she used to work in my court when I was allowed to be municipal judge in Vestavia, before things changed in 2016. No, I'm not bitter. And we became friends at that point, and then we haven't seen each other in that many years. So tell me how you got where you are and what is the Resource Center?
So I'll start from the top. So apparently I have always wanted to be an attorney. And my mother will tell you that I came out talking about and arguing about how I was always going to be an attorney. So I went to Shades Valley and with Mayor Woodfin and his sister Candace. Oh. And then I went to the University of Alabama, where I got a diploma in women's studies. And I had such a fantastic time there that I came back and worked as a domestic violence court advocate. And I had 3 counties and about 33 courts, and Vestavia was one of them. And then in 2008, I took a leap of faith and went back to law school in Mississippi. When I came back, I had already created really good relationships with the protection from abuse dockets that I worked at Jefferson County Family Court. And so at the time, the presiding judge after I passed the bar was Brian Huff, and so Judge Huff swore me in and gave me my first case, and that was in September of 2011. And then in February of 2012, I got the incredible opportunity to become an Assistant Attorney General for the state of Alabama, representing the Jefferson County Department of Human Resources. So that meant anytime a child was removed from a home or there were allegations that came before a court about child neglect or abuse, we would go in and essentially on the civil side prosecute that and tell the judges why these children should be removed. Uh-huh. I did that for 7 years and 3 months, and it was about 2014 where it became pretty obvious to myself and to some other judges, and rest in peace, former presiding judge Sandra Storm had always had this idea of having a one-stop shop, because all of the barriers that present to these families going through these different systems levels, DHR, family court, the juvenile justice system, they're just enhanced when you add on top of that cyclical poverty and food insecurity and having to hold down low-paying jobs and appropriate childcare. And it just became evident that there was such a need there. Mm-hmm. So in 2014, we started having a serious conversation about what getting a resource center together would really look like. So we slated our first board in 2016, and Nancy Trucks has been on that board since 2016, and we have an incredible board. A lot of our board members have been with me since day one. I was secretary of the board, and then I was vice president of the board. And then when we got our first funding for adult workforce development, I rolled off of the board to become the executive director.
So you mentioned a good point, funding. Where does that come from?
So we are an emerging site for what is called the Alabama Network of Family Resource Centers. And it's actually really impressive. Alabama was one of the first states to implement the legislature implemented 25 standards that you have to meet in order to be a family resource center. The Alabama network is now, I think, 25 centers with 3 emerging sites, and they're located all over the state. So you're dealing with a high population, a high amount of transient issues in this population. So what that means is I leave Jefferson County and go to Talladega. I don't necessarily have to start my program all over again. Those resource centers are in touch and those programs may look different, but I don't have to start
from scratch
again, right.
Yeah.
And in 2020, in June, the Alabama Network was provided funding for every one of their resource centers to implement an adult workforce development program. And that money is through line items into the state budget through SNAP and TANF funds and general workforce development funds.
So you get some funding from not just the state, but also federal funds as well? You write grants and things of that nature?
Well, that's not where we started. Where we started, we are line itemed into the state budget every year.
And still are?
And still are. We started out with $75,000 per resource center, and last year they bumped us. We were doing such a great job. They gave us each $115,000.
So we're going to take a short break in a little bit and go into the detail of when you use the word resource center, exactly what that means to the person who's in need of services that the resource center has to offer.
Sure.
So I know there's a lot of moving parts, at least it seems like.
Yeah.
And I also know from talking to other people that, we have the gun violence issue that you're involved with some of the individuals that take advantage of what services the resource center has to offer. So we'll talk about that when we come back from break. Is that okay?
Of course.
Don't leave me. We'll be right back. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Taking a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm talking to Carrie Buntain about the Jefferson County Family Resource Center. Hard to remember all those words sometimes, but so we use this word resource center. Break that down I know that's a big title, but underneath it there must be many services that make up what the resource center is.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, we are like an umbrella agency. So part of our job is to make sure we go out and know what services are available, what resources are available in the community.
For instance?
So we know that transportation, housing, and food insecurity are three of our biggest needs, especially in the west end of town where Family Court is located. So the first thing that we started doing was implementing a food box distribution. And then the second thing we started doing was thinking about, if we know transportation is a barrier, how do we get our clients to and from these different places?
So when you say clients, are you talking about young individuals that are in the family court system because they've either been declared in need of supervision,
right,
or they've picked up a criminal case or something along those lines?
So for the most part, our clientele are people involved with the family court system. We do also get a lot of referrals from outside in the community. And so we have a lot of single moms who struggle with appropriate child care. And it's our job to make sure that we are hooking them up to state certified daycares and to child care resources and places like that who specialize in providing appropriate child care, so that you're not just having to leave your child with whomever because you've got to go to work. So it's all about helping families navigate what resources are out there. And in COVID times, it got very tricky because we didn't get to see, teachers weren't laying eyes on their kids. So there wasn't the mandatory reporter everyday interaction. So we lost a whole lot of children. And by lost, I mean some just didn't re-enroll in school, or nobody laid eyes on them for weeks on end. And that became a very serious concern. So we start talking about what happened to those children. Well, they haven't been in school in a couple of years. And now, Now they need to become productive members of society, and how do you do that? The GED is extremely difficult. The high school equivalency exam is tough. And so we just have to prepare them for what that looks like. And that's one of the most serious needs that we see right now is you have to have a GED just to get a job at McDonald's.
And a driver's license.
And a driver's license. So,
and transportation.
And transportation. And you have to have, in order to get a driver's license, you have to have a birth certificate and a social security card. So how do we go about getting those things for these families when they don't know necessarily how to do that themselves?
And I think that's where a lot of people miss the boat, is presuming that that knowledge is something that everyone possesses that may not have ever been exposed to what it takes to make those things happen.
Right.
So do people reach out to you, or do you reach into them to get help?
Every which way. People oftentimes reach out to us. The best way to get us is info@jeffcofrc.org, or go to our Facebook
pretty
page.
Simple. Y'all made it really simple.
Yes. And then
don't worry, it's showing underneath
Perfect.
you right now.
And then that'll go straight to my phone, and I send it to whatever member of my team I think can fit those needs best.
And does that person contact?
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other end, are people receptive? And sort of like an intervention.
Sure.
When you're dealing with an addict of some sort. You have to ask the addict to allow me to help you, for example. Do you find that to be something that people are receptive to? Will they let you in their homes to help them?
Well, there are three kind of hard rules that we go by. One, nothing is free. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. So I may pay your water bill, but I may ask you to come and work 2 hours while we distribute food boxes. Two, we can't want it more than you. If you're not in a position where you're ready to accept services, then come back when you are. And we get that.
And you tell them that on the front end.
Absolutely, yeah. And three, it's not our position to judge. What we find very oftentimes, if I'm entering a situation, I'm coming at it with a law degree, with a college degree, with a high school diploma. I have a lot of things that a lot of people don't have. So that's when we start talking about meeting the clients where they are, understanding that their reality is completely different from ours, and that survival very often, for a lot of our neighbors, comes down to they're trying to survive, not to succeed. So how do you focus on getting your GED if you're wondering how your kids are doing, or if the light's going to be on when you get home, or where your next meal is going to come from? So there's a lot of things that I think that we just as people with advantage take advantage of and forget about, because that's not what we've lived, and that's very, very different. But it is very much appreciated by people who have been told over and over and over in all the contacts they've had with their different systems, I'm going to fix this. It's going to be okay. I'm going to make a call. That doesn't help. That doesn't empower them. And that's what we want to do. We want you to be able to live your own life and make your own decisions. You just need the tools in your toolbox to do that.
And do you see the results come from your efforts?
Absolutely. Now it's all about relationships. So
like most things in life.
Like most things in life. So, I can't come and condescendingly tell you I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's not my reality. I get to go home at night. I am going to say, here are the available options to you. And these are the things that I think you should do, and these are the things why I think you should do them. But ultimately, we want you to be your own person and make your own decisions. We want you to have that autonomy, so you choose, and we just help you get there.
So just like the addict, they have to want the help.
Sure.
They have to allow you to help them.
Well, and if you think about the amount of violence that we've had, you'll hear people talk about it being a public health crisis. Well, public health to me means that it's almost like an illness. Yeah. And if you're used to carrying a gun all day long, every day, so that you feel safe, it's going to be different. Your norm is going to be different than my norm.
Let's talk more about guns when we come back from break, because that's a big problem. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We've been discussing some very sad but uplifting issues going on in our community that Carrie is helping others work through. One of the things I know that many of our viewers are concerned about is the amount of gun violence we see almost daily in our communities. And even though it appears to be according to law enforcement and others I've interviewed, limited to a very small segment of our population, it's still reoccurring. So what does your center have to offer to try to get into those family units where a lot of this violence occurs? And for example, conflict resolution.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no more punching somebody in the face or flipping off a bird. You know, it's a gun.
Yes.
So what do we try to do, and how do we go about it? And you have to keep in mind, this is a long-term proposition. This is not a quick fix.
Well, and it's a very, very complicated, complex issue that's not for today. But the Restore program is built around precisely those elements of society that people are very easy. They're very easy to write off, and for the most part, the Restore program is targeting our youth who have had family court contact over and over and over again since they were infants. I mean, we're talking DHR involvement. We're talking a 7-year-old who's getting pulled in front of a court for truancy. We're talking about a lot of mental health issues. We're talking about the lack of parental guidance. And I don't think that it's maliciously intended even. I think it's tough for a single mom who has to work 3 jobs to be at home to supervise her kids. And then, so it opens up a can of worms. But the Restore program is the first and most important thing is the people that we hired to be our Restore coordinators. And we're using the word coordinator because we want to get away from the word case. You're picking up a case. You've got another case manager. It's a case. It's a case. You're not a client. You're a case. So we call them coordinators. And we have one who is got a military background. He went to law school. He worked at another agency doing adult reentry. He brings a lot to the table. And our other Restore coordinator has done prison time. And every different prison he went to, he would pick up a different type of certification. And so he has this lived experience. And when he comes to talk to these kids, they don't see him coming. He's got dreadlocks, he's usually in a dashiki, and he speaks to these kids the way that they are used to be spoken to. And he can bond with them and interact with them on a way that I cannot. And that is the most important thing for them, is to see that it doesn't have to be, their lives aren't as cut and dry and as created for them as they think. There is always room for improvement, and there is always room for hope. But you see this all the time when you're in court, and just the sad look that people have when they're heading up to family court, or when they're heading up to really any court.
I call it the house of pain.
Exactly. So you're not trying to come to family court unless you need something, unless it is a crisis situation. So we try and reach the youth first. And then we try and reach out to their custodians in their family unit and try and figure out whatever so-and-so did, that didn't happen in a vacuum. What else is going on in that family that maybe we can address? Conflict resolution is super extreme. Nobody grows up seeing a lot of that anymore. I mean, it used to be when I was in high school, we would have fights in the parking lot. And it was always like, oh, okay, who's gonna punch you? It never happened for real. But it's different now. And so we are very we watch Facebook pages. We watch the rap videos that get dropped. We know exactly who our kids are affiliated with. And that is the first and hardest way in. We went 13 days without losing a single teenager in Birmingham because some of the other credible messengers sat down together and came up with a plan to reach out to some of the leaders of these juvenile gangs. Meet them at barbershops.
Credible messengers.
People with lived realities.
Okay.
Coming to them and saying, I did this and I went and spent 10 years behind bars, but you don't have to be me. or it's y'all are getting y'all are bringing really tough pressure from the feds. They're looking at you. You've got all these automatic weapons, these 100-round, guns. And we went, it was a complete truce. We went 13 days without losing a single kid. We went 14 days without a single shooting. And that is because the older people that these kids look up to and they think of as real street cred came to them and said, y'all got to stand down. It is way too hot. But the amount of money that these young people have and the amount of engagement they have not had or opportunities they have not had becomes extremely profound when your life is dependent upon anger and grief and trauma. I mean, if you're 16 and you've lost 3, 4, 5, 6 of your friends to gang violence, siblings, you just become almost immune to it.
Yeah.
And you're not addressing that trauma. So you're more likely to go out there and react as opposed to address what's really going on and your anger behind losing all those people.
As opposed to going proactive to try to change your own behavior.
Well, in order to go proactive, you have to understand what that means.
Yeah.
And that means giving up on your family, your street family, because when you go home, your family maybe isn't there.
Yeah. Are you looking for coordinators? If there are people out there that would like to be a coordinator?
Absolutely. We
What
are
do they do?
always looking. You email me at that same email address, info@jeffcofrc.org, and that comes straight to my phone. It's not easy to be able to stand up and say, I went to prison and I have re-entered society. And it's certainly not easy for people who have gone to prison to re-enter society. And when you put them down in front of a young person who's 16, 17, who has just about that much more time left before they hit the adult world, it gets really real quick.
That's fascinating. We appreciate all the good work you're doing and your peeps that you have under you.
Thank you.
Or with you,
Yes.
I should say, would be a better way to express that. We thank you for being on the show today and enlightening our viewers. And perhaps we'll check in with you somewhere down the road and see if we're on the upswing.
Sounds
I think
great.
we are. Are we? Are we making some progress?
I think so, and our data is showing us some really interesting things.
Well, we shall see. We'll save that for the next show.
Yes, you got it.
Thanks for being with us today. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We'll see you next Sunday.